Hey, I'm Cameron McKenzie at CameronMCNZ on Twitter, and I wanted to talk to you about installing Git with Notepad++ and configuring Git so that when you do a merge or when you do a commit, you don't get VI, you don't get Atom, you don't get Nano. Instead, you get the beautiful Notepad++ editor to do your commits on. Notepad++ and Git are definitely two of my favorite tools of the decade. Now, I like to use Notepad++ as the editor for Git. I don't like VI, I don't like Nano, I don't like Atom. A lot of people feel the same way. So if you want to configure Notepad with Git, the way you do it is you first download Notepad++. So here I am on the downloads page. I'm going to take the stand with Hong Kong option, and I'm using a 64-bit operating system, Windows actually. So I'm going to click the 64-bit installer, and that will download instantaneously on my fast connection. Not too much that you have to know about installing Notepad++. I just accept all of the defaults, put that into the default location. All of this looks good to me. I even like to put a shortcut on the desktop, even though I don't like to clutter up my desktop. I'm going to click Finish, take a look at the nag screen that comes up there, close it, and say thank you very much for installing Notepad++. Now, I don't really want to talk to you about installing Notepad++. I want to talk to you about installing Git and using Git with Notepad++. So how do you do that? Well, I've got Git right here. That's scm.com/download/win. It'll recognize that I'm on a 64-bit operating system and very, very quickly on my lightning fast internet connection, download Git. I'm going to double click on this and do the installation here. The installation's changed quite a bit from earlier versions that were available even last year. You'll notice that on the install wizard, well, actually where you want to install Git, I do not like installing anything into a folder with spaces in it. It just causes problems for my scripts. I also like to keep folder names all lowercase. So I'm going to change the location of the Git install to _tools/git. And then accept the defaults on this screen. I definitely want the Git bash shell and the Git GUI, so I'll select next there. Sure, put the start menu on there, although I'm not a big fan of cluttering up the start menu. Now look at this. I have the option to choose which editor I'm going to use, and they've recognized that a lot of people like Notepad++. So there we go. I've got the option to use Notepad++, and I'm going to select that. If you don't have Notepad++ installed, you're going to have to install it before you click next on this screen. Notice some of the others, Visual Code, Sublime, Atom, a bunch of different options. As I said, I like the simplicity of Notepad++. I hope it never changes. Okay, some other things to take a look at. What do you want the branch to be called when you create a new Git repository? The historical default's been master, but that comes with a lot of cultural baggage and negative connotations associated with the term master slave. So we're moving away from that. GitHub already defaults to main. You've got the option to set that so that it defaults to main as well. Just for backwards compatibility, I'm going to leave it as master, but I'm going to start making that change in the future. Here, they're going to install a couple of tools with Git bash. Now, they say, we can extend the number of tools that we put in here. It might cause a problem with Windows find and sort features, but as a developer who works with Unix quite a bit, I like the idea of putting these extended tools in. So selecting this option, that's fine. Be courageous, especially if you're doing development, maybe pushing to a Linux system. Choose that last one. Going to use the OpenSSL library. Also, always check out Windows style, but commit Unix style line endings. That's a good call. Use Minty instead of the typical command window on Windows. I like that option. And also here, they've introduced the option to rebase when you do a Git pull rather than do a fast forward merge if it's possible. This will keep your Git commit history a bit cleaner, I guess. Rebase tends to confuse a lot of people who are new to Git, so it's a complexity that I don't need right now. So I'm going to leave it as a default. I like that. I think that's fine. Also, there's big changes in how credentials are passed across the network. There's a new Git Credential Manager core that's in use. I'm going to choose to use that because I like to be on the leading edge of technology. You've also got the option to use the older Credential Manager as well, or just use none. I'll click Next. Enable file system caching. I'm not working on a big repo, but if you are, that might come in handy. And you can also have some experimental pseudo consoles to help with Node or Python applications running. I'm not doing Node or Python development, so I'm not going to select that. It does say that it's a little bit experimental, so I'm just going to keep things as stable as possible and let this install. Now, after this is installed, it's always a good idea to open up a Git bash shell and see if things are working. Well, in fact, if the Git bash shell is available, that indicates that it's working on its own. So I'm going to click finish there. And with that nag screen closed, I can take a look and make sure that, well, Git was installed properly. Notice if I right click on the context menu here, I get these two Git options, Git GUI, Git bash. I'm going to create a new folder in here. It's just the downloads folder, so I'm just going to delete all this stuff shortly, but I'll create a new folder called temp, right click, say git bash here, and just do some basic git operations. So I can do git init, and that should initialize a brand new Git repository. I can do a little touch hello world.html, which just creates the file. You can see that file there. Part of doing Git is adding things to a Git index, maybe taking a look at the status of your environment, Git status. Then, of course, we always want to do a Git commit. Now, if I try and do a Git commit here, it won't work because I have to set my username and password. So usually I have to do git config -- global, and then say user.name and say Cameron. And then do git config -- global and say user.email me@example.com. And then once you've done that, you can actually do a git commit. Now, if I don't do a -m switch, watch what happens. It opens up in Notepad Plus Plus. So you can see it doesn't open up in Vim. It doesn't open up in Nano. It's actually using Notepad Plus Plus as the default editor. I'll just say, hey, this is my first commit. And then click Control S to save, close the window, and Git recognizes that Notepad just did that. And all of a sudden it says, okay, your commit has been finalized and put in. I can even do a Git ref log, and you can see it says right there, hey, there's the first commit. That's the commit message. And there you go. That's how easy it is just to set up Git and also configure it to use Notepad Plus Plus. And there you go. That's how easy it is to configure Git with Notepad++. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, why don't you head over to the serverside.com. We got lots of great tutorials on enterprise software development, Git, GitHub, DevOps, you name it. If you're interested in my personal antics, you can always follow me on Twitter at CameronMCNZ and subscribe on YouTube.